Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Welcome back to the channel. We're going to get right into it. We're going to be talking about the 5 things no one tells you when it comes to living in Denver. Ooh. I guess it's not that no one tells you. We tell you.
That's right.
Either way, jumping into it, not necessarily in any specific order.
Yeah.
But we're going to try to give you guys a couple of extras that you might not be privy to, even if you've been watching the channel.
That's right. And we're not pulling any punches. These aren't all going to be negative, but definitely good to know things that you might not have heard yet.
Like number 1, our insect count is super low. It's one of my favorite. He always picks on me when I bring this up. But it is something that you're not necessarily appreciative of until you realize that you have it. So what I mean specifically is just the amount of snakes, rodents, insects that are here in Colorado. It's, to me, in my opinion, it's next to none. Remodel our basement, for example. We're in Southeast Aurora. It's a newer area. A lot of soil's getting dug up. You'd think there'd be more snakes and more spiders just because of the soil being disrupted and dug up. And even remodeling or finishing our basement, we saw no spiders. I know it's not that I'm afraid of them.
It's nice when they're not there though.
When we go on vacation or we're in Florida, we're going to different places, it's just the amount of bugs or the humidity that the bugs bring. It's nice that we don't have to necessarily deal with it. So you might not be considering that when you're looking at where should we live? Are we going to be living in Denver? What places? It's something that people don't speak too much about, or you don't even know to recognize that and be appreciative of it. But as far as just overall bugs,
it's
snakes,
true.
Whatever, it's none.
It's true. Now I live out in the country. I've seen one snake that I've had to go looking for, right? And that was in 3 years of living there. And we'll get a couple spiders out in the sheds and stuff like that, but I haven't seen one mouse. Really, that's it. It's been a couple spiders. We'll get our house sprayed twice a year. We've got a little bit of spiders, but no mice, no snakes living in the country. That's pretty crazy.
And it comes to just a high altitude and the drier climate. I know in some areas you have a drier climate like Arizona and things like that, but maybe because it's lower altitude, it brings some things. But I think it might be a combination of higher altitude, drier climates. And with that being said, something else that we speak to it, considering it when you guys are out here, not just when it's hot, but we are closer to the sun, believe it or not. It's got something to do with you burn a little bit more here than if you're in California. California, you get that nice sun-kissed tan. Here, you still get a great tan, but you are a little bit higher in the altitude, so it just has a little bit more of a sharp bite. But I do think that the drier climate and the altitude help a ton when it comes to overall just our insects.
No, absolutely. Now, as we're talking about altitude, let's talk about the mountains, all right? How mountainy is it in Denver, Colorado?
Well, in the mountains, it's mountainy.
It is very mountainy.
Speaking of that, even in the winter, make sure you bring sunscreen because, yes, you guys can get burned off of the reflection from the snow. So we've talked about that before. Side note. But what you might not be considering in Colorado is that if you're not going to necessarily be in the mountains or going to the mountains, Colorado's pretty flat.
It is. It very much so is. And that's something that we hear from a lot of people when they're coming here and they're like, I want to live somewhere that feels very Colorado. That's why we recommend Castle Rock quite a bit, because Castle Rock has a lot of Colorado nature within it versus pretty much everywhere else. I mean, you can see the mountains or the Rocky Mountains, but if you didn't have the mountains over there, you might just feel like you're in any other normal rural area.
Correct. Now, these new build communities and a lot of communities that have been around for probably the past, I'd say probably 15 years, have done a great job as far as building intentional areas where they have big hills and big pine trees. Towns Reach is a great area. So that's also in Southeast Aurora. It's a great example of you're southeast, you're not close to the mountains. It's not Castle Rock. It's not built into the rocks. It's higher up and it's flat. You've got a great view of the mountains, but they've done a great job in the neighborhoods as far as building the parks and the trails and hills and how they build the homes around inside of that community to look and feel like Colorado. So even though it is flatter, once you start getting into some of these communities, they do a great job at still giving you that feel.
No, absolutely. And matter of fact, we were just on a Zoom call with some buyers yesterday. They're like, hey, we don't live in the mountains, but man, it's a little bit flatter out here than we thought, and we want to get close to the mountains. So some of the places that we talked about them going were Boulder, Golden, Morrison, far west Littleton, and then even down in southwest Littleton near Roxborough, and then of course, Castle Pines and Castle Rock.
Arvada's another area that you might consider. It's also more west. You've got some great views of the mountains, but something that you might not know about Arvada, and I don't know if it's still necessary or not, but a lot of areas in Arvada are considered a flood zone. And what does that mean for you guys? Well, because it's a flood zone, your insurance on your home could be a little bit higher depending on what grade of flood level or flood zone that it's in, based off of how in the middle of it or toward the edge of it is. Insurance rates will apply. But what's interesting is Arvada's never flooded except for 100 years ago. And I think they fixed, I guess, just how Arvada works and how the water drains, and it hasn't happened since.
Yeah, some canal or something up there.
They still have it. It's still a thing. So when you guys are getting closer to the mountains and things like that, you just want to make sure that you're super aware of where you're purchasing and what conditions come with that. And speaking of that, that's my reminder of letting you guys know that yes, we are licensed brokers here in the state of Colorado. And yes, just as much as we love making these videos, we love to help you more with those real estate needs and or any of those flood zone issues that you have. So that number that's popping up below, We are the guys who answer the phone calls, text messages, and those emails. So if we can help you, we would love to. But with that being said, let's move on to our next point as far as what you guys might not know when living in Denver.
That's right. Now, out here, our next point that we have here is, hey, you're not going to find an East Coast, West Coast battle, but you will find a North versus South battle.
And it's your own battle. It's
That's
not
right.
your north or someone else's north versus your south. It's not Fort Collins versus Colorado Springs. It's if your house faces north versus facing south. And if your house
Right.
faces north, you're just typically going to get a lot more shade on the front of your house based off of the sun's rotation and the flat, curved globe, earth, whatever they call it.
Yes, science!
For whatever reason, science has made the north side of your house in Colorado
Yeah.
a lot more shady throughout your entire day, which means when it does snow, that shade's going to keep it there for a lot longer.
Yeah.
A lot of it's going to freeze over, and you just got a little bit more maintenance when it comes to the front of your house versus if your house faces a different direction, it tends to melt pretty good.
Yeah, now if you're literally walking down a street where you have homes that are facing north and homes that are facing south after a snowstorm, you'll see all the south-facing homes will have completely dry or just wet driveways.
Green grass, flowers.
Yeah, flowers. And then the north-facing homes, just dark, desolate Iceland.
Just walking out to a Monday for that entire week until you shovel that ice. and
That's
get it out
right.
of there. But either way, it might not seem like a big deal, and typically it's not. Most folks have that. They're okay to salt. They're okay to shovel. What is important is when you guys are looking for homes, just making sure you're aware of those things versus finding out 6 months later when winter happens and you're just never
That's
melts,
right. That's right. Now let's dive into the actual sort of lifestyle that you're going to have out here. You know, a lot of places are very nightlife heavy, right? And don't get me wrong, Colorado has its share of nightlife, right? Bars, clubs, a couple of them, great concerts and good music venues out here. But for the most part, they're getting crazier on Sunday fun day with a hike and then brunch with their friends than they are necessarily getting crazy on a Friday night.
And it kind of coincides with our next point. So not to jump the gun, but I think a lot of it has to do with how fit Denver is. We talk
100%.
about that a lot. Everyone knows what fitness is or what being active is, but most don't talk about just typical human behavior by folks that like to stay fit. They're not necessarily out getting crazy all the time. They enjoy their workouts. They enjoy their yoga. They enjoy Red Rocks and doing their stuff there. And it just doesn't command that intense all night partying, reckless type of lifestyle.
Yep, and that is a great point because there is so much to do here in the daytime and on the weekends, whether it's going out hiking with your friends or solo or going camping or taking the family out in the trailer to go camping all weekend or skiing and snowboarding. There's so much to do here, and if you look at a lot of the other big cities that have just really predominantly nightlife driven sort of habits out there, there's not as much to do within the state itself.
No, and just to be clear, we're not talking about a retirement state. We're not talking
right.
about Tampa, Florida,
That's
or
right.
something like that. No disrespect to Tampa. We love Tampa, but we're not talking about boring. We're just talking about a different, probably more modern approach to just lifestyles and what people enjoy to do. But you still have 4 seasons here. You still get plenty of winter. The altitude is still something to get acclimated and adjusted to. So this is not a relaxed, boring state. It's just active and high-paced in a different lane of focus versus the party, the nightlife, and that such.
It's true. It's true. Now, finally, I think we're more than 5, but let's keep rolling. Let's talk about new build homes. There are some states out there that are just full of new build home communities, and we have plenty of them out here in Colorado, but they're going to be on the outskirts for the most part.
Right.
The way Denver was built, you know, it started in Denver and spread out from there. It also started near the foothills and moved east from there. So that pretty much just means that the places remaining for new build homes are going to be on the north, the far east, and then down south.
Correct. And just to be specific, Eli's talking about your master plan communities where you're looking at 300 to 10,000 to 20,000 home build communities versus if you are in like the city and county of Denver, you will get new townhomes where they scrape a development and rebuild it. You'll get single family homes that are scraped and rebuilt. So you will get some of those. But as far as like the master plan communities, you're not going to get those in and around like in the heart of Denver. You're going to get them on the outskirts. And by outskirts, we mean they typically start right around like that 37 minutes away from the heart of Denver. And now, so we're talking about the Castle Rocks, the Southeast Auroras, more importantly, like the East Auroras. You've got some in Arvada, but they all kind of trace the outskirts of Denver in each city, roughly right around like that 35 to 37 minute. And obviously, if you get even further out toward Elizabeth and or anything else, you've got some that are popping up as well out there, but just not necessarily in the heart of Denver.
Yeah, which brings us to our next point. I think 7 or 8 or 9.
We're not counting today. We're
That's
just
right.
giving value. If you're still here, if you're still watching, we love you.
That's right. We do love you. But that is that, hey, if you are coming here, a lot of people don't actually live in the city of Denver, right? They come out here and they do find that they want these master plan communities. They do want newer build homes. Initially, people might be like, oh man, is that going to be too far of a drive for me? And then they start diving into the maps in real time, and then and they see, like Will said earlier, man, I live all the way in Castle Rock and I need to drive to Denver every day for work, but it's only 35 minutes or 37 minutes. The way that our highways are structured and just the way that, I don't know, our driver behavior is out here, where it's like people are just fairly kind, you don't really see these massive traffic jams unless there's an accident. So it is actually possible to live on the outskirts, but still go to Denver every day if needed.
Correct. If you guys are getting south into like Castle Rock or just past Castle Rock, sometimes like the snow gets a little heavy enough where they might shut down parts of I-25 north and southbound just due to the elevation changes on that highway. And because it freezes over. Typically that happens maybe once, maybe twice a year. I think this year didn't happen at all, or maybe just once. But the further south you get, there is some elevation change. There is some things to be cautious of. But if you guys are in and around just the outskirts, like that 35-minute and in, for the most part, the commute's great all year round. Our infrastructure as far as plows and everything else like that do great. And what else we do great?
Yeah, what else?
Our outros, our us.
What else?
Reminding you that we are licensed brokers here in the state of Colorado, and just as much as we love making these videos, we would love more to help you with those real estate needs. So the number that's popping up below, we are the guys to answer the phone calls, text messages, and emails. So if there's something we can help you with, we would love to. But that being said, you guys enjoy your weekend. We'll see you guys very soon.
Right on. Take care, guys.